Alright, I'm back with another Destiny 2 video, taking a Diablo break to circle back to what at least used to be my main game, and it's temporarily not, but I know I will certainly keep playing it indefinitely. I did not do a TWAB video yesterday in lieu of the fact that I already made a Diablo video based on my one of my builds. But I did want to touch on one of the major things that was listed in the TWAB, this big Q&A with some of the sandbox team. I am not calling it a TWID. I will never call it that. That is the worst acronym, and that sounds very weird. So, sticking with TWAB. This covers a lot of stuff, abilities, guns, exotics, many things. I wrote about the hand cannon stuff specifically earlier today because I thought that was the most significant, but there's a lot of interesting stuff in here, so I thought I'd kind of go through it. I'm not going to like necessarily, read word for word. I just kind of want to discuss what is listed here. So they start with abilities, and they're talking about PvE ability uptime, that it's possibly too high. They are not announcing any specific changes, and they know that everyone wants space magic and stuff, but they do seem to be somewhat concerned about just how high ability uptime is. There are just a bazillion ways to get all of your your melee and your class ability and your grenade back very, very quickly for a lot of builds. When they do ability nerfs, it's usually PvP related because people want gunplay, not necessarily ability play in PvP, but they do seem to be at least somewhat concerned in PvE. And they have made changes, like they did increase a lot of cooldowns a little while ago, like at least the overall cooldowns, and yet because of the way things work and all the different ways you can get your abilities back with, ionic traces and picking up orbs and whatever, it doesn't really matter. So that seems to be a problem. They are going to buff Tangles. They understand that the 15-second cooldown time on Tangles is probably too high. They said it was too crazy to make it like way lower than that, or else you create like too many Tangles. So they're just doing, I don't know, it's significant. They're going down from 15 seconds to 12 seconds. I think that's better. That certainly sounds like it'll help at least a little bit, because 15 seconds just is so long. So 12 will feel better. This is season 22, which is next season, I think. I'm pretty sure. I lose track. Just, can you... Well, this doesn't have a name yet, but I think we're in 21. Okay. Brood Weavers. Threadlings can feel underwhelming in high-end content, given how better Suspend is. So they are buffing Threadlings, and they are going to do a sizable, quote-unquote, Threadling damage increase against PvE targets. So that will really buff Warlocks, which are mostly Threadling-based. And they are also separately buffing the new Warlock aspect, the Wanderer, is that Broodweaver? Yeah, okay. That is Warlock. I don't remember the names of the new ones. And they're saying it's not potent enough. I have heard people really liking that, but I haven't used it myself. So that is being buffed too. The Threadling buff will also help any weapon with Hatchling. Hatchling is like the strand perk that you want, usually. However, they are going to nerf Suspend. I always knew they were going to nerf Suspend. Suspend is so strong, and you could have it up so often, especially with like the Warlock Suspend Osteo build, things like that, or Suspend on demand with Titans, or I guess Hunters with the aerial crash move. Again, I don't remember any aspect names. So I am not surprised that they are going to be nerfing Suspend. I'm assuming they're going to nerf Suspend in terms of like the time that things can be suspended, because it is ridiculously long and just so much better than like freezing things with stasis. I feel like freezing things with stasis should last a lot longer than Suspend lasts, but whatever. Grenades, they are going to be buffing some of the underperforming options. I don't think they said they will adjust overperforming ones later, but they don't appear to be doing that immediately. I guess we'll see. But yeah, obviously a few grenades are much better than others and used a lot more often. So I guess remember they changed grenade cooldown times to be different than one another, but I think some grenades are still way behind. Okay, this is the hand cannon buff section, which is elaborate. What I love, so this is like one example where the community kind of thinks they know something and then they don't. Myself included here, honestly, because everyone has always been saying we gotta revert the Shadowkeep precision buff, because that is when everything, especially hand cannons, all legendary primaries really started feeling worse. It never really felt very good after that. However, they are saying that, like, with the way PvE has expanded over time, if they did go back to Shadowkeep days, it's actually technically a nerf now, because of, like, it's the crit is essentially the same and, like, body damage is higher now. Like, it would essentially be a nerf to go back to that, given how the sandbox has changed, which is very funny. So I guess we should stop calling for that, because it would not do anything. That said, obviously hand cannons are still underperforming. So they already got an extra 20% damage boost, and reload speed is not great, and they have small magazines. I said already that 20% was not going to be enough for hand cannons. It still takes something like 3 precision shots to kill a Harpy on Neomuna. Feels terrible. Just feels really bad still, even with buffs. So they're doing a bunch of buffs. So they're increasing reload speed at 0. So if you have no reload speed, that's being buffed by 15%, but if you get to 100, that is unchanged. This benefits hand cannons that have a low reload stat, which is mostly aggressive and precision ones. I said this in my article, but, like, I really think that reload speed is one of the worst things about hand cannons. Nothing else is even close to the comically slow reload speed of most hand cannons. I think it needs, like, a crazy buff, like 30-40%. However, this is like a PvP problem where you can't, that's, like, not balanced for PvP probably, but it is better for PvE. And I was talking about, like, the glory days of hand cannons when you had, like, an Outlaw Midnight Coup where it was, like, it was so snappy, but they nerfed Outlaw, and they don't really have that many other dramatically reload increasing perks like Outlaw. It's still kind of just Outlaw, like maybe Feeding Frenzy a little bit, but because hand cannons are so bad at killing things, something like that is not really that beneficial for hand cannons. Or something like Keep Away now, if you're far away, you get some increased reload speed, but it's not very much. So, I mean, this will help a little bit, but reload speed, I think, is a big problem with hand cannons in PvE. I guess magazine size too, but that's why, like, something like Malfeasance feels so good, because it's like 20-something magazine. Plus you're getting, like, almost additional shots because of the explosion, because those feel like even more shots every 5 shots. So that's why Malfeasance is, like, one of the only good feeling hand cannons now, especially with recent buffs and the Vorpal thing and stuff like that. Everything else, not so much. Okay, so they are increasing PvE damage against minors by another 20%, and then increasing damage against majors by a massive 75%. If you ever tried to shoot a major with a hand cannon, no point. No point in even trying to do that. Take out your special or heavy, because you're not going anywhere. Essentially almost double damage on majors. I am curious if that moves the needle. It is so bad right now, I don't even know if that big of a buff will do it. What's also interesting here is that, again, all of these buffs apply to exotic hand cannons. So Malfeasance is going to be just insane. Again, like, Malfeasance alone is, like, the signature wild hand cannon right now. But, this will affect Sunshot and Lumina and Thorn and, like, I guess the last word for your PvE last word needs. But I still think one of the biggest problems with primary legendaries is this difference, this huge difference between exotics and legendaries, where either people are running double special because legendary primaries do so bad, or you're always going to pick the exotic version of whatever legendary thing you want to use. So if you want to use an auto rifle, you're going to use Quicksilver Storm or, like, Sweet Business or Monte Carlo. You're not going to use 98% of auto rifles, except maybe, like, Rufus's and Age-Old Bond, but, like, that's kind of it. For hand cannons, like, you're not going to use Round Robin, or, like, you're going to use Sunshot or Malfeasance or something. So I don't know. Like, as much as exotics feel good with the 40% buff, like, it really just makes so many legendaries pointless. So I think almost everything needs that buff, but I don't know. We'll see. Also, they are adding heavy burst hand cannons. It is a 2-round burst. They are starting with Warden's Law, which they say is more satisfying to use in the previous version. So this is going to be a new class of hand cannon they introduce. That should be interesting. I always love new archetypes, and 2-round burst sounds fun. It's like a little sidearm-ish. Those would need larger magazines than anything, I imagine, but this is cool. I'm not really wild about Warden's Law coming back for like the 3rd time, but whatever. Okay, then they go to kinetic weapons. They are not doing great compared to everything else because they have no subclass synergy at all. Because there's no kinetic subclass, which they joke about. Maybe it's time for that kinetic subclass. No, they're not doing that. They buffed kinetic weapons a little bit to offset the bonuses that energy weapons get. They added something like what's it called? The tremor perk, which seems kind of cool. Still not very amazing in practice. So they are looking to buff these in some sense. So it says they're going to equalize the numbers between the weapons, but then they're also going to ensure that all slots can tie into build crafting. So that sounds like they might give kinetic weapons like subclass based perks somehow. I think I don't know how else you quote unquote tie into build crafting unless you do that, or unless you have like some additional armor mods that use kinetic things specifically, because right now it's like kinetic loader, kinetic orb generator, like the end. That's like kind of it. So very curious to see what they do there. Glaives and the exotic glaives, the poor exotic glaives. They have a tuning pass coming. They're going to make aiming them better in PvP. Good, I guess. I love glaives. I love glaives so much. I think they're amazing. But sure, any more glaive buffs, I'm all for it. They do not like the class-specific exotic glaives. They are terrible. They are finally adjusting how players activate the exotic perk, which is so bad. The hold to reload thing to then trigger the perk, very terrible. Like it's so bad. The only one of these I ever see people use is the Titan Bubble one, because that has like some synergy with other things, but that's it, and that is very rare. Of course, they have Vexcalibur. That is a really good exotic glaive. They have Winterbite, the heavy one that has broken the game more than once. But the class ones have always been terrible. If they change how the exotic perk works, that could actually be genuinely good. But I'm very curious to see how that goes. This is a whole thing about how things get nerfed and buffed. And there's this, again, community narrative. Bungie balances based on usage. This is not the case. They talk about internal feedback and playtesting. Live source feedback from usage. They look at usage by owners, so not to miss what's going on with low ownership weapons. Weapon effectiveness, which is kills per time equipped, win rate, design analysis of the implementation of the weapon, looking through the perks and data to see if something's wrong. They go through a list of weapons, and they have which weapons get attention changes depending on the focus of the season. If there's a high representation of a weapon type in the seasonal artifact, they will look at that specifically, making sure they perform well. That's interesting. So they've done that with the tuning of some machine guns and grenade launchers in the past. Grenade launchers still suck. These need to be buffed. 50% reserves increase, another damage buff. Perfect. Okay, they don't mention this at all, though. Exotic tuning in the future. The controversial section. They've shipped Season 21. Season 22 exotic passes are done. Season 23 is in full production for exotic changes, and the final shape is entering early production. Some people interpreted this sentence as they're just starting to work on the final shape, which comes out in like 9 months. Nope, that's not true. That's not how game development works. I guess the wording is a little confusing, but they're talking about exotic tuning. They're not talking about like making the expansion. They're talking about like how they're just starting to work on final shape exotic tuning, because it takes 9 months to build and test a bunch of changes. So there we go. So they're doing more exotic weapon tuning in Season 22, which they've been playtesting. Nerfing Monarch and PvP, they already talked about that. Buff to Touch of Malice, which nobody ever uses. Minor changes to other exotics. Legendary perks, they're adjusting. Bipod, Shoot to Loot, Under, Over. I'm wondering what they're doing. Is Bipod too good? I haven't used Bipod a lot, but And they are doing the zoom to damage fall-off normalization and the sword guard rework, which will also affect exotics. We've pulled several well-tested changes from Season 22 into Season 21, and those are not being talked about here, I don't think. I mean, the hand cannon one is, but... and they are making... Here we go. As usual, we're making an exotic catalyst for an older exotic weapon in Season 22, and this is one that's been heavily requested and the most complex catalyst we've ever made. It's Monte Carlo. It's got to be Monte Carlo. I know some people are saying Thorn because people want a Thorn catalyst, but I think it's Monte Carlo. I think it's going to be the you can stab people with Monte Carlo like a glaive thing. However, I think that's more complicated than that because the ability of Monte Carlo is to charge your charge melee ability. So I think it has to be a little more complicated than your melee with Monte Carlo is now stabbing people, because that doesn't really work with weapon synergy. So they are doing something complex with this. I still think it will involve Monte Carlo stabbing things, but we'll see. If this is Thorn, I'm not going to complain about that. I mean, all these hand cannon buffs seem like they could really, really buff Thorn in PvE, so I just think it's Monte Carlo. Exotic tuning, looking at pain points or on underperforming weapons. They list that twice for some reason. And they poke the list every season. Exotic armor. My favorite exotic armor could use a buff. Are you going to balance legacy exotic armor? There are many existing exotic armors we want to see get more use, and a few that feel a little too strong. We've already nerfed so much exotic armor. They're going to balance incrementally over time. Next batch of changes in Season 22. I don't think they're doing a great job of this. They did so many buffs this season in terms of underused stuff they're trying to buff, but like they keep being married to some of these ideas that are not good ideas in the first place. Like what is it? Is it Raiden Flux, where you deactivate your Arc Strider Super and it is an explosion, and like that's not a good concept. That's just not a good concept at baseline. Only a few of those have really kind of felt like awesome adjustments. There's like, I don't know, maybe two. And some of those are the huge reworks, like no backup plans for the massive shotgun buffs. There's so many buffs that were just like, you do more damage with solar weapons and you don't have to use solar damage boosts on your armor anymore. It's like, okay, that's fine, but I don't really think that's like a buff in the traditional sense. Also, unless you buff, what's the freaking ugly statue face one? I can't even remember the name of it right now. But unless that gets buffed, I'm never going to use it. And by buffed, I mean it needs a good ornament. Stompies. They are married to the Stompies change. They're going to monitor how it's performing and make further changes. Nobody likes the Stompies change, where you can only get the benefits when you have your class ability up. Nobody likes this, but they're sticking with it for now. Are there plans for more exotic armor interactions with exotic weapons, like Necrotic Grip? I feel like this gets asked all the time, but they say they're going to do it for Hunters and Titans. They're not going to do it that much. They're rare and a little hidden. Warlock has two of these. They have one with Lumina, too, with whatever those Boots of the Assembler, right? Yes, Hunters and Titans, it would be fun to have stuff interact with those, so that'd be cool. Pre-Lightfall armor mods coming back. They're paying attention to how the current system is performing. They want base armor mods to be straightforward and approachable, the foundation of your builds, not the star elements. They want to experiment with fun and novel ways to interact with Orbs of Power, Armor Charge, and other armor mod systems, and plan to do so via the seasonal artifact. So not a ton is changing there. They're just going to make it seasonal changes. I don't like the armor mod system and the armor charge system, like, is more streamlined. I'll give it that. I don't know if I don't know. Elemental Wells got so overpowered, like, clearly something had to change, because Charge with Light, outside of like a very few select things, was pointless, and then Warmind cells were just never developed again. They were replaced by Tangles with Strand. So I don't think they're going to go back to that. Like, they've done a couple, like the Seeking Orbs thing, but I don't think we're going to see a ton of those, and they're not really indicating that here. Favorite shaders. Apparently they are going to do shader favoriting, but it's complex. It's one of those things where it sounds easy, but it is probably more complex than we think. Don't know when this will ship. Maybe the final shape. I don't know. They did say sharing some new features in this vein real soon, but they also talk about complex features that aren't far along to attach a specific release. So I have no idea. I don't know. Could be next season. Could be 3 seasons. Who knows? confirmations regarding HUD and UI updates previously mentioned. I don't know what was mentioned. Is it all the information, like blocking out all the other information on the screen? Because that's very annoying. They're going to show something closer to the final shape. So that is the big sandbox Q&A. A lot of interesting stuff in here. There's not that many specifics per se. Tangle stuff and some grenade adjustments, whatever, threadling buffs. The hand cannon thing is the most detailed thing they're talking about. So that is coming very soon. The mid-season update. Is it season 20? I don't know what season we're on. This is very confusing. But this is happening. Oh wait, no, season 20. In season 20, that was last season. Okay, so it's season 21 now. So that makes sense. So we're getting this halfway through this season. Very curious to see how this feels. And I guess I'll take some of my favorite hand cannons out of the bolts and, go from there. But a lot of good stuff in here. Some things like, hey, stoppies are good, actually. We're not changing that. But a lot of stuff is somewhat promising in here. So this is a great Q&A. I'm really happy they did this, and it's a good level of communication. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I'm going to go back to Diablo for a bit. Okay, take care.